The atmosphere on the snow-covered street is completely festive, filled with decorative lights everywhere. The decorated tree attracts the attention of pedestrians with its bright radiance. A cheerful couple walks with their young daughter, enjoying the evening before Christmas. Suddenly, the family members stop walking when they come across a tall man blocking the way. The girl is astonished to notice the size of that individual. The protagonist steps aside to give space, allowing the family to move on while he feels the melancholy of that date. Isolated among so many people, he notices that he is the only one alone during the end-of-year festivities. The freezing temperature on the subway stairs seems to reflect your own current feelings. Suddenly, he stops walking when he spots an unusual detail lying on the ground. On the sidewalk next door, the young man notices the presence of another person abandoned to their own fate. Lying on the cold floor, a man dressed as Santa Claus appears to be soliciting donations. Upon seeing the piece of cardboard placed next to the man, he reads a message asking him to reveal a request to Santa Claus. Melancholy memories surface in the boy's mind as he leans towards the ground. Immediately, he pulls a 10,001 bill from his pocket, determined to help the elderly man. Stretching out his arm, the main character offers the man the sum of money and a thermal device. Unexpectedly, the old man grabs the young man's hand, applying impressive pressure. Grateful for the generosity he received, the costumed old man cries while insisting that the young man express a wish. Quite frightened, the young man considers that the man has lost his mind and makes a move to leave. However, the firmness with which the elderly man holds it resembles a metal pincer, preventing any escape. As he tries to pull his body backward, the boy notices that he is completely immobile in place. With a gleaming look in his eyes, the old man pleads to hear the wish, explaining that this is the only way to return to Santa Claus's homeland. Giving up resistance, the young man agrees and asks if he will be released as soon as he says what he wants. With his image reflected in that man's peculiar expression, the protagonist finally begins his story. In order to test him, the boy asks for wealth through lotteries, but the old man objects, stating that this is not his true desire. As he let out a long sigh, the young man's expression changed, revealing a profound inner dejection. In revealing his greatest suffering, he confesses that he only longs to have family members nearby who will always be with him. Concluding his confession, the young man adds his desire to have an affectionate companion and a docile little girl. Sniffing the room, the elderly man dressed in red claims to be able to clearly perceive the authenticity of those feelings. With a broad smile on his face, the man celebrates having met someone who shares so many similarities with him. Suddenly, the man's face takes on an intimidating expression, as he assures that he will receive a virtuous woman and an affectionate girl. Intimidated by that unsettling expression, the young man makes a sudden movement and manages to break free from the grip. Moving away from the man, the boy dashes off, convinced that the old man is not in full possession of his mental faculties. Shouting from afar, the old man vehemently asserts that he will use his magical powers to grant the request. Boarding the commuter train, the young man struggles to erase from his memory the bizarre episode he witnessed. Leaning against the window, he ponders the reason that led him to make that senseless request. Observing the advertisement of a harmonious home, he inwardly recognizes that his true desire was simply to find happiness. Half closing his eyelids under the weight of exhaustion, he tries to rest, just like the other passengers around him. However, an unpleasant smell of filth accompanied by an icy breeze begins to disturb his rest. Upon waking disoriented and running his hand across his forehead, he suddenly notices the absence of his upper garments. With a startled look in his eyes, astonishment overwhelms his thoughts as he contemplates the disconcerting panorama before him. A wooden-drawn vehicle moves forward with constant oscillations through a village with ancient characteristics. Confined by metal bars and wearing only underwear, the young man wonders, puzzled about his location. Turning his attention to the side, he spots an extremely dirty man with long hair and torn rags. Leaning against the metal structure, the man has an apathetic expression, demonstrating that he has lost hope in his own existence. Observing his surroundings, the boy realizes he is in captivity, filled with individuals imprisoned by shackles treated like animals. In the midst of utter despair, he wonders if he has ended up traveling back in time to the medieval period. Looking at the armored sentinels outside, he notices that the language they speak is completely incomprehensible. As he ponders the scene, he notices the absence of other people with Asian features, resembling the setting of an old film production. By connecting the dots, the young man arrives at the startling conclusion that he has been transported to an alternate dimension. Overwhelmed by bewilderment, the weight of having been incomprehensibly moved to this place is fully present in his mind. Sturdy metal links fixed to their heels eliminate the possibility of a simple escape. Looking to the side, he notices that one of the prisoners lying on the ground appears to have no vital signs. Moved by what had happened, the protagonist whispers a plea for forgiveness to the deceased, explaining that the survivors need to find a way to make a living. Hurrying to put on the deceased's worn clothes, he seeks to protect himself from the cold gusts that lash his body. Lying on the wooden floor of the truck, the boy's face reveals profound anguish. Recalling the statements of that disturbed old man, he wonders if this terrible situation corresponds to the so-called happiness that was assured to him. Trapped in this distressing situation, time marches on while the structure that shelters them continues its trajectory toward an uncertain fate. Settled in a corner, the young man begins to come to terms with the difficult realization of his new condition as a captive. Exhaling dejectedly, he understands the purpose that motivates the combatants to transport the group from one side to the other. Observing the other weakened prisoners, he deduces that their fate is to be sold to the buyer who offers the best deal. Suddenly, the metallic sound of keys opening a lock breaks the silence of the path. Forced to disembark roughly, the prisoners are lined up to undergo evaluation by the local leader. Although he feels humiliated at being treated like a marketable item, the boy still retains a small glimmer of optimism. Due to his good physical build, he presumes that he will be acquired quickly, shortening his confinement period. Facing an air of confidence, he places his hopes on this moment, representing a favorable turning point in his destiny. However, after passing through multiple villages without anyone showing any interest in him, his optimism turns into utter distress. Returning to the dirt track, the vehicle moves towards progressively darker and more desolate geographical elevations. Shaking through the dense forest, the vehicle carries captives who have already lost any motivation to resist. Letting himself fall wearily onto the planks, the young man wonders how his situation could have deteriorated to this point. When recalling her mother's face, the advice to strive to the utmost no matter the adversities faced echoes in her thoughts. With his heart completely devastated, he asks his deceased parents if he still has the strength to endure such an ordeal. Memories of that obnoxious costumed man claiming extraordinary powers resurface in his mind, raising his level of indignation. Discarding any trace of optimism, he scorns that reality and brandishes a sharp utensil he found. Determined to end his suffering, he points that sharp object at himself in an attempt to shorten his journey. However, suppressing tears at the final moment, he abandons the act, declaring that he refuses to perish in such a degrading environment. While reflecting on his quest for well-being, the protagonist hears an unusual call that captures his attention. Having put away the pointed object, he remains silent, proceeding to analyze the newly arrived figure. In a subtle way, a delicate hand reaches through the gap between the metal bars, extending a piece of bread. Sporting a friendly expression, a beautiful lady with brown hair provides food to the boy. Acting with benevolence, she expresses solidarity by speaking words in the native language of that region. Hiding beneath her mother's skirt, a small, fair-haired girl observes the young man curiously. Too weak to react, he simply drops the sharp object on the floor of his enclosure. In a remote location, a modest country dwelling stands alone amidst dense forest vegetation. Settled on the floor, mother and daughter share a simple meal laid out on a rustic piece of furniture. With a voracious appetite, the girl devours the broth, making the size of her appetite evident. In a loving way, the mother slides her own plate towards the little girl, encouraging her to eat a little more. Suddenly, the baby stops eating and stares silently at her mother. Moved by compassion, the girl tries to return the portion, arguing that her mother also needs sustenance. By pointing with her index finger, the child emphasizes the mother's need for food, causing astonishment in the woman. With an affectionate attitude, the child directs both containers towards her mother, demonstrating her concern for her. Expressing a smile with tears in her eyes, the woman is moved by her daughter's genuine behavior. At that moment, energetic knocks on the entrance startled the pair, followed by the voice of the community leader identifying himself. Holding the girl tightly in her arms in a distressed manner, the mother listens to the visitor's instruction that there is no need to grant entry. To be objective, the leader informs that the community has decided to designate one of the captives to assume the role of her spouse. Prior to his departure, the old man orders provisions to be sent to the guards, instilling a sense of urgency and dread in the woman. Lying on the ground, she clings to her daughter, gripped by terror of suffering physical abuse again. With her body trembling, she is fully aware of the impossibility of escaping from that place. Observing the child who had fallen asleep, the caregiver realizes that she would be unable to leave the girl unattended. Weeping profusely, she asserts that she will in no way allow that minor to go through further hardships alone. Memories of the little girl's sorrowful weeping return to the mind of that humble woman. The little girl's cries echo in my memory, revealing all the trauma of the past. Isolated in the dark cabin, the two cry in each other's arms, suffering from their cruel fate. Crouched on the floor, the woman wonders what misfortune will befall her from now on. Shrunken and trembling, she inwardly begs not to relive the nightmare of her former marriage. Keeping an eye on the sleeping little girl, she knows that the child is also terrified. Focusing on the 5-year-old girl, she recalls that the little girl is an orphan of the man who died. Recalling her own past, the woman reveals that she was sold by her father in exchange for a rabbit skin. On her very first day in the cabin, she recounts being beaten by her future husband even before unpacking her bags. Left on the ground, she recalls that the only justification for the beating was that she had arrived late. Violent beatings marked the beginning of that miserable life, making the harsh reality sink in completely. Lying on the wooden floor, the young woman seemed to have no strength left, not even to breathe. Suddenly, the little blonde girl approaches with timid steps to see what happened. Lifting her bruised face, the girl cries as she looks at the small figure in the room. Standing there in the middle of that hell, the little girl displays an innocence that breaks your heart. Calmly, the child sits on the floor next to the woman, devastated by the attack. Touching the girl's shoulder, the child seemed like an angel offering comfort at the worst possible time. Embraced on the ground, the two found peace together, for the abusive husband had disappeared into the mountains and never returned. Village rumors said that the monster was devoured by wolves during the hunt, leaving its torn clothes behind. Upon learning of the wretch's death, the woman felt an immense relief wash over her. However, this joy was short-lived, soon giving way to a new, somber despair. Aware of how the world works, she understood that a widow becomes easy prey for bad people. Returning to the present, the mother squeezes her daughter's hand and walks firmly towards the entrance of the village. Drawing her mother's attention, the little girl points in surprise to something among the trees. In the sunlight, the prisoner's wagon catches the little girl's attention. Standing in front of the cage, the two watch our little prot kneeling inside. Carefully, the woman approaches the cart, taking the little girl with her. Startled by the approach, our boy's eyes widen, the gun still tucked under his neck. Shocked by the scene, the woman immediately recognizes the expression of someone who has already given up on life. Traumatic memories of being brutally beaten resurface when she sees the boy's despair. Pulled by her hair in the past, the woman remembers the humiliations she suffered. Oppressive and cruel, the man spoiled even mealtimes, letting his fork fall in the same position as the prisoner. Determined not to let history repeat itself, the woman takes a piece of bread from the basket. Standing with a compassionate look, she prepares to offer the food to the boy. Reaching out through the bars, she attempts to save our protagonist's soul with a simple gesture. Fallen to his knees, the protagonist faces the pair and feels a glimmer of hope as he drops the weapon. Just now, the village chief suddenly appears and calls the woman's attention. Taking the basket of bread, the old man says he will take care of the guards and sends the girl back home. Calling her daughter, the woman obeys and begins to move away from the cart, leaving the boy behind. Over her mother's shoulder, the little blonde girl casts one last curious glance at the prisoner. Firmly gripping his piece of bread, our protagonist follows the two women with a fixed gaze. Without thinking twice, he bites into the food, savoring the taste of the kindness he has just received. Two soldiers brutally open the cage and yell at him to get out immediately. Receiving a kick in the back, the boy is thrown face first onto the dirt ground. Overcome by grief, he refuses to let go of the bread and stifles a scream. Lined up on their knees, the three slaves wait while the master announces the beginning of the ritual. Quickly, the guards pull out daggers and pierce the hands of the other prisoners, who scream in agony. Dripping fresh blood, the blade approaches our boy, who falls to his knees. Magically, the scrolls reveal luminous symbols, leaving the little protagonist in total shock. Confused by the bizarre magic, he wonders once again what kind of crazy world he has ended up in. Whispering in the chief's ear, the soldier speaks something in the incomprehensible language of that place. In a quick whisper, the village chief discreetly points to our protagonist kneeling on the ground. Completely lost, the boy understands absolutely nothing of that strange conversation. Far away, the woman's humble wooden hut remains peacefully in the middle of the forest. With a heavy sack thrown on the ground, the old man announces that the village will provide supplies for a while. To the point, the woman warns that her new husband doesn't speak their language and that the alimony debt will have to be paid later. In a sincere tone, the village woman confesses with her arms crossed that nobody liked her former husband. Without mincing words, she explains that they only tolerated the deceased because they desperately needed a guard on the mountain. But the old woman assures her that this new man is quite different and that his hands are as soft as those of a nobleman. To calm the girl, the lady says that hands like that have never hit anyone and that she will live very well. Saddened by the situation, the woman shakes the old woman's hand, saying that she doesn't care about any luxury. With a sigh of fear, she only begs that the big guy not be a violent man. While covering her sleeping daughter, the young woman hopes only that the man will leave them both in peace. Suddenly, violent knocks on the door break the silence of the cabin, announcing the arrival of the chief. Startled by the noise, the woman jumps, feeling her heart race instantly. Through the small window, she freezes at the sight of the absurd size of the man accompanying the leader. Invading the space, the village chief enters and immediately drops the bombshell, announcing that he has brought the new husband. In a state of shock, the girl broke out in a cold sweat upon hearing those words coming from the old man's mouth. With a completely lost look, the little protagonist enters the house, not understanding where on earth he ended up. Perplexed by the scene, the woman wonders to herself why they are dragging such an injured man there. Face to face with the giant, she incredulously questions whether this is really the man she is to marry. Overcome with terror, she realizes she has never seen anyone so enormous in her entire life. Still confused, our boy finally catches sight of the girl's frightened face. In a mental flash, he quickly realizes that it is the same person who gave him bread in the slave cage. Quite curious, the little protagonist finds it very strange that she is trembling so much. Impatient, the boss grabs our boy's arm, demanding action. With brutality, the old man pulls the protagonist towards the girl, forcing interaction. Completely bewildered, the boy stops when the boss points his finger right in the woman's face. With a firm grip on the wrist, the old man tells the young woman to relax on her wedding day. In a swift and invasive gesture, the leader joins the two men's hands and ends the ceremony right there. Standing side by side, the old gossip compliments them, saying they already look like a beautiful couple. Faced with that bizarre atmosphere, the protagonist deduces what's going on even without knowing how to speak the local language. Right now, the demonic face of Santa Claus the beggar resurfaces in her mind, promising a pure wife. As if by magic, our boy sees a bright, fluffy bunny-like aura surrounding the woman. Focusing his gaze on the little child, he connects the dots, remembering the promise of a daughter as beautiful as a mongoose. Shocked by the coincidence, the little protagonist finally understands that the crazy old man was real and kept his promise. Aware of all the madness, the boy reflects on the absurdity of being thrown into another world for a wish to be granted. Filled with hatred, he recalls the tortures he endured and questions why the gift came with so much pain. With blood in his eyes, the boy swears to himself that he will slaughter Santa Claus if he crosses paths with him again. Unwittingly releasing a demonic aura, he ends up terrorizing his new bunny wife and mongoose daughter. The very next day, the group meets in an open area of the forest illuminated by the sun. Irritated by his boss's shouting, the protagonist complains that he can no longer stand being deaf to that language. Immediately afterwards, the old man turns his face to the villagers, preparing the next step of the plan. Suddenly, one of the men approaches our boy, extending his hand for a greeting. Without suspecting anything, the protagonist accepts the gesture and shakes the villager's hand. Shocked by the subject's overwhelming strength, he feels his bones crack and clenches his teeth. Suspicious of the situation, the little protagonist narrowed his eyes, analyzing the intentions of those people. Suddenly, the boy returns the grip with monstrous force, causing the guy to fall to his knees screaming. Faced with the scene of pain, the boss simply shakes his head and claps his hands in approval for our boy. The old man approaches with short steps and extends a hunting bow towards the protagonist. With the weapon in hand, the leader demonstrates the correct posture for shooting in the middle of the woods. Confused by the gift, our boy picks up the long-range weapon without understanding the mission. In a bizarre gesture, the boss steps back and puts his hands on his head, imitating a furry animal. Hopping on the dirt floor, the old man pretends to be a rabbit in front of everyone. In a moment of clarity, the protagonist finally connects the dots and realizes that the class is about hunting. Out of nowhere, the old man stops the charade and makes an aggressive attack gesture with both hands. Shouting, the chief points to a target in the bushes, demanding that the boy shoot the arrow. Standing calmly near the bushes, a small white rabbit chews on leaves, unsuspecting of anything. In an internal panic, the boy tells himself that he has never held a damn bow in his life. He awkwardly pulls the rope, remembering that even professional athletes struggle to hit the target. Focused on the objective, our protagonist closes one eye and tries to aim any way he can. In the blink of an eye, the arrow startles the rabbit, plunging into the ground with a sharp impact. Surprisingly, the boss laughs and claps, while the boy doesn't understand how the aiming worked so well. Then, gentle footsteps on the little pro's back catch his attention and break the mood of the training session. Along the dirt path, the bunny wife and mongoose daughter appear, carrying a picnic basket. Surprised by the visit, the boy simply stares at the woman as she timidly approaches. Faced with that enlightened vision, he reinforces in his mind that this beautiful girl is now his responsibility. Blushing with embarrassment, the boy looks away while the gossipy boss observes the romantic tension in the air. Quickly, the girl spreads a giant sheet on the ground, preparing lunch in the middle of the woods. Sitting facing each other, the awkwardness of a first date hits the lovebirds hard. Carefully, the boy holds the bowl full of hot meat and vegetable soup. With the spoon near his mouth, the protagonist notices that the woman and the child are staring at him with tremendous expectation. In a quick start, the girl pulls the little girl back, mortified at having been caught spying. Completely indifferent, our boy ignores the scene and focuses on the meal while trying to accept his new and crazy reality. With a gentle smile, our protagonist reflects on his new reality. Accustomed to living completely alone since his school days, he recalls that family is a strange word. Fortunately, our boy now has two people sitting next to him sharing a meal. With the bowl in his hand, he mutters to himself that he would have preferred things to have happened more naturally. Focused on the illuminated sky, the little protagonist confesses to wanting to kill Santa Claus, but also feels immense gratitude. With a sigh of relief, he thanks them quietly while the two continue eating peacefully. The very next day, the trio walks through the forest following in the footsteps of a villager. With a giant bag on his back, our protagonist glances back, quite worried. Completely exhausted, the young woman and the child struggle to keep up with the strenuous pace of the walk. Irritated by the damned language barrier, he laments not even being able to ask if the two are all right. With no time for frills, the boy decides he needs to adapt to this world as quickly as possible. Memories of his deceased mother surface in his mind, warning him that he cannot hesitate when it comes to protecting someone. Clearly, the mother's voice echoes, affirming that action must be immediate. In a quick turn, our boy stops walking and turns around with the heavy bag. The woman abruptly bumps into his back and is startled by the sudden stop. Terrified, the little blonde girl stifles her tears, her eyes shining with terror. Kneeling in front of the two girls, the protagonist announces that he will pick them up and asks them not to be afraid. Completely frozen, the girl remains motionless, expecting the worst. With hands clasped together, she begs for mercy in an alien language he has no idea what it is. Desperate, the child begins to sob, clinging to her mother's dress. Aware of the misunderstanding, our protagonist notices that his mere presence already causes terror. In a quick request for leave, he moves towards his new family. With agility, he grabs the woman's waist, surprising the poor thing. By throwing the girl over the bag of supplies, he adjusts the load effortlessly. With his other arm, he lifts the little blonde girl with the greatest of ease. Our boy stands firm and strong, carrying the woman and child at the same time. With wide eyes, the little girl lets out a tiny scream of pure astonishment. Thrown onto his back, the girl is stunned, not knowing what to do. With a confident smile, the little protagonist tells the two to hold on tight. Along the way, he notices the girl's weight, finding them both too light. Determined to change this, he vows to learn how to hunt soon so he can stuff his family with meat. Out of the corner of his eye, he warns the young woman that he will be working very hard from now on. Delicately, the woman reaches out and caresses the nape of our protagonist's neck. Surprised by the gentle touch, he hesitates slightly in his steps. With her forehead pressed against the boy's warm back, she breaks down in silent tears. Crossing the forest, our boy carries the weight of his new world without complaint. At the final destination, the villager points to an isolated cabin and bids farewell. Left behind, the protagonist watches the guide disappear into the trees. Facing the new house, he deduces that the place must be colder than his old room. Amidst memories of slavery chained in the cold, he admits that he now hates winter more than ever. With a push on the wooden door, he enters the shack to check the situation. At the cabin door, his expression changes to pure confusion. Over his shoulder, the girl glances inside and immediately turns pale. Not understanding the despair, our boy asks why the tears are falling again. Like a lightning bolt, the woman runs inside, passing by him in despair. Curious about the reaction, the little protagonist enters right behind to investigate. Through the open door, the light reveals the interior of the shack, which has been completely looted by the villagers. Right on the dirt floor, the girl cries loudly, mourning the loss of her bow and arrow table and even her hammer. Thoughtfully, our boy deduces that without tools there is no way to fix the house or defend himself from wild animals. Slowly walking towards the defeated girl, he finally understands the gravity of the problem. On the grass beside her, he decides to show her that she is no longer alone. With his right hand raised, he reaches for the head of the woman who is crying uncontrollably. He gently strokes her brown hair with great affection. In a comforting tone, he asks her to relax, trying to reassure her. Looking at her husband's face, the young woman questions her own destiny by his side. Disappointed by the lack of communication, our protagonist feels useless as the guardian of the mountain. Without much faith in the future, she accepts the affection, closing her reddened eyes. Full of confidence, he swears that he will protect them both no matter what happens. After wiping the tears from her face, his gentle touch calms her repressed despair. Gazing at that gentle face, the young woman finally feels a pang of relief in her chest. In his memories of the past, our boy confesses that he has had to fight alone since the death of his parents. Resistant to every fall, he built a hard shell against the rest of the world. Now that he has a real family, the little protagonist knows he can overcome any obstacle. He resolutely beats his chest and vows that he will do everything to ensure that nothing is lacking. Emotionally exhausted, the woman tries to swallow back another loud cry. In a protective embrace, he gently pulls his wife close to comfort her pain. Fast as a rocket, the little blonde girl dashes towards the two, shouting her mother's name. Clinging to the woman's leg, the child begs the giant not to hurt Lizzie. Seated on the edge of the lake, the three form a moving scene in the middle of the forest. Faced with the weight of that girl crying on his shoulder, the boy comes to his senses. For the first time, the novelty of having a child and a wife in a fragile state touches his heart. Several questions hammer at the curious mind about the painful past of the two. But choosing to ignore the mysteries, he kisses the woman's forehead, promising to dry all her tears. As a seal of his promise, he gives the lake a tight hug, vowing to be the best father and husband this world has ever seen. Bathed in the light of dusk, the wooden cabin finally seems to be at peace. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, our protagonist sighs in frustration, thinking he had gained intimacy with his wife but was back to square one. Analyzing the situation, he mentally thanks her for no longer being terrified, just awkward about their new living arrangement. Suddenly, an idea lights up the boy's mind to break the ice. Pointing to his own chest, he says his name loudly and clearly. In a measured voice, he repeats Kim Joo-won, hoping they will understand that they need to get to know each other. Immediately afterwards, he points to the girl, encouraging communication. With his hand outstretched, the little protagonist politely asks her to say her name. Tense and nervous, the woman murmurs something similar to Lizzie, leaving the boy confused. By touching her own chest, she confirms that her name is Lizzie, and our hero finally understands. With a wide grin, he compliments her name, trying to lighten the mood. Focusing his attention on the little blonde girl, he points his finger and asks what the child's name is. Immediately, the mother tenses up and lowers her gaze, instantly changing the atmosphere. With a negative shake of the head, the little child indicates that it doesn't have a name, breaking our protagonist's heart. Determined to change that, he reaches out to pet the little girl. Gently stroking the girl's blonde hair, he names her Dorothy. In the boy's mind, the reference to the Wizard of Oz is perfect for her to have a life full of adventures and friends. Like a free bird, a white dove crosses his imagination, symbolizing the happiness he wishes for the girl. Curious, the child points to herself and tries to pronounce the new name with absurd cuteness. With a toothless smile, she finally manages to say Dorothy and accepts the gift. Outside, the little protagonist releases his energy by chopping wood with violent axe blows. Hidden behind a tree, the girl spies on his work, finding it all very surreal. Observing the young man's physique, she notices that he is much taller than her late husband but infinitely kinder. With shining eyes, she admits to herself that she has never met a man with such protective energy. Repeating Joo-won's name, she notices that his accent is refined and his voice conveys a great sense of calm. Memories of a violent past contrast sharply with the affection she is receiving now for the first time in her life. Fascinated by the young man's smile, she wonders the reason for so much selfless kindness. Watching the boy gather more firewood, she is absolutely certain that he doesn't belong in that godforsaken place. With an animated wave, the protagonist catches his wife's attention, interrupting her thoughts. Focused on his face, she intensely observes the young man's dark hair and black eyes. Straight from the past, rumors from the village echo in her mind about an enemy nation that summoned a legendary hero. According to gossip, this invincible warrior had exactly the same somber appearance as her new husband. Walking towards her, the boy has no idea that he is being judged. Looking deeply into his dark eyes, the girl tries to find the truth. Trying to push away this madness, she concludes that a hero would never be living there. In her view, it would make much more sense for a legendary warrior to live in a luxurious palace and not on a forgotten mountain. Near his wife, he lets out a tired sigh, the firewood breaking the air of mystery. Looking more closely at the boy's hair, she notices that it leans more towards brown than dark black. Relieved by the realization, she sighs happily that he is just an ordinary man, slightly taller than average. Out of nowhere, it dawns on her, and she scolds herself for being so relieved about someone she just met. Completely red with embarrassment, the woman turns her face away, leaving our boy totally confused about the situation. In a gesture of pure instinct, he places his heavy hand on the top of her head. Immediately the girl freezes, remembering that the only time a man did that was to beat her. Gently placed, the boy's hand simply rests among the brown strands, caressing them. As she relaxes her shoulders, the woman closes her eyes, feeling an indescribable peace. Overcome by a desire for that affection to last forever, she surrenders to her husband's gentle touch. With flushed cheeks, she appears to be on cloud nine with the unexpected protection. In an unexpected move, our protagonist leans in and gives her a quick kiss on the cheek. As if struck by an ice spell, poor Lizzie freezes in fright and embarrassment. Overcome with embarrassment at his own behavior, the boy stammers, not knowing where to hide his face. To escape quickly, he grabs any old wooden bucket. In a desperate race, he flees towards the forest, leaving his paralyzed wife behind. Catching her breath, the girl lets out a silent scream, her face burning like a pressure cooker. Hidden among the trees, our hero curses himself for being an idiot for the stolen kiss. With his hand in his hair, he tries to justify himself by reminding them that they met on that very day. Without mastering the local language, he panics, devising strategies to act naturally upon his return. When he suddenly stops in his tracks, he realizes that something is very wrong. Looking around in the darkness of the forest, the boy realizes he is terribly lost. Around him, the woods begin to look frightening, warning that he is no longer alone. Focused solely on getting water, he tries to ignore the tense atmosphere and the growing fear. Suddenly, a sense of danger causes the protagonist to freeze from head to toe. Before him, the shadows reveal two bright, demonic red eyes. Thirsty for blood, the monstrous beast bares its sharp fangs, ready for slaughter. With wide eyes, the boy recognizes a black wolf of absurd proportions blocking the path. Without wasting any time, he grabs a thick piece of tree trunk to use as a weapon. Face to face with death, our hero prepares for impact. In a lightning-fast attack, the monster plunges its teeth into the wood the protagonist uses as a shield. With extreme effort, the boy resists the weight of the beast, which roars with hatred. With his trunk locked in the wolf's mouth, he tries to find an opening to fight back. Filled with fury, our boy shouts that he refuses to die in a forgotten hole like that one. With a powerful punch, he uses all his willpower to push the creature away. Despite the resistance, the wolf bites harder, breaking the wood and tearing the boy's flesh. With his entire body burning in agony, the protagonist lets out a scream of pure despair. However, in a survival instinct, his eyes gleam with a mysterious energy. Out of nowhere, violent flames explode from the boy's hand, engulfing the wolf's face and revealing the true magical power it hides. With his arm ablaze, our protagonist faces the beast, ready to retaliate. In an agile leap, he mounts the giant wolf's back, plunging his fiery fist into the creature. Without any pity, the boy unleashes a barrage of explosive blows to the monster's head. Showers of sparks fly in all directions as he crushes the creature with all his rage. Finally, the black wolf falls dead to the ground, bleeding and smoking. Tired and breathless, our hero collapses onto the grass, trying to process what has just happened. With his hand raised, he observes his own skin, perfectly remembering that his arm caught fire. Curious, he notices that the clothes and skin have no burn marks. Then it dawns on him, and he wonders in shock if he really just used magic. Lost in thought, he recalls how he was transported to this world, and how the guards used magic scrolls. As an avid reader, he deduces that gaining overpowered abilities is a classic trope in fantasy stories. Excited by the discovery, he stretches his hand towards the sky and shouts, "Fireball." Determined to try again, he repeats the move several times next to the dead wolf, but nothing happens. Fully focused, he calls for higher-level spells, shouting Firestorm and Wall of Flames. Desperate for a legal effect, he invokes Dragon's Breath and even calls upon the spirits of the earth. Faced with the awkward silence, the boy is left with a dumbfounded look on his face, realizing the foolish thing he's done. At this point, the boy notices that the magic has healed some of his battle wounds. Filled with hope, the protagonist plans to master this power to become an elite hunter and support his family. With his mind on a lavish banquet, he visualizes the two of them eating meat and smiling happily. Besides food, he plans to use his gift to heal wounds since they live isolated in the mountains. Determined to take one step at a time, he gets up from the ground and focuses on the present. Straight from bitter memories, the boy recalls the tense day of his parents' funeral. Suddenly, an angry relative lunges at him, delivering a violent slap in the middle of the wake. Lying on the ground, the boy hears the shouts blaming him for the death of his father and brother. Surrounded by stares of pure hatred, the young man in elementary school was treated like a truly cursed plague. Back in the forest, the hunter shakes his head and decides to drain the beast's blood so as not to attract predators. Without wasting any time, he throws the dead weight of the giant wolf onto his shoulders so he can return quickly. With the monster on his shoulders, he remembers his grandfather cleaning chickens and rabbits in his childhood. Under the moonlight, our hero walks calmly, wishing his grandfather could see his strength now. Midway through the journey, he's still racking his brain trying to figure out how to train his fire magic. Far away, the wife tidies the humble house near the lit fireplace. Quick and helpful, little Dorothy runs off holding an empty bowl to help. With a sweet smile, the adoptive mother thanks her and pats the little girl on the head. Radiant, the child lets out a delightful laugh, loving the affection received. Curious about the noise outside, the little girl runs to the window to peek. Leaning against the parapet, she widens her little eyes, facing the darkness. Out of nowhere, the child's expression changes to pure shock. Before her, the terrifying head of the giant wolf dangles on the boy's back. Terrified, the girl screams in panic, immediately drawing her mother's attention. In desperation, the woman pulls out a huge kitchen knife in the blink of an eye. Shouting for her daughter to back away, the mother runs like a rocket to the front door. With her heart in her mouth, the woman opens the door, ready for combat. Startled by the commotion, our boy holds the dead wolf, not understanding the family's panic. Standing at the door, the wife freezes upon seeing that her husband is alive and carrying the beast. She quickly throws the knife to the ground and runs towards the boy. Releasing the animal haphazardly, the protagonist comforts the woman who arrives in tears. Ignoring her fear, the girl clutches his clothes, worried that he may have been devoured. With her hands on the boy's face, she checks if he is injured, tears in her eyes. Trying to calm the situation, the boy stammers, saying that he got hurt but is already fine. Right behind them, little Dorothy grabs the protagonist's leg, crying uncontrollably. With a warm smile, the hunter reaffirms that it was just a bite on the arm and that everything is all right. Sitting on the grass, the family finally breathes a sigh of relief beside their hunting trophy. In a surge of emotion, the woman hugs the boy with all her might. Leaning against his chest, she repeatedly says that she was dying of worry. Seeing the child whimper like the mother, he feels the weight of being loved. Standing before the illuminated shack, the protagonist vows once more that he will never make the two of them cry again. The following morning, the crows fly over the roof, announcing the beginning of a new day. Focused on his work, the boy uses a small knife to skin the wolf on the table. With great force, he pulls at the thick skin, trying to separate the hide from the flesh. Covered in sweat, he grumbles that his grandfather made it seem like the easiest thing in the world. Tired from the effort, the hunter wipes his brow and decides he needs to learn a better technique. Finally, he finishes the rough work and cuts a good piece of fresh meat. Opening the door of the shack, he enters to deliver the food. He immediately comes face to face with the girl carrying a wooden bucket. Surprised by the coincidence, he smiles and goes to meet her. Gently, the wife lowers the bucket, nodding her head to indicate for him to put the meat inside. With a bead of sweat on his head, the protagonist immediately understands the woman's intention. Searching his memory, he concentrates to recall the word of thanks in the local language. He awkwardly manages to pronounce "thank you" in a clumsy way. With wide eyes, the young woman is surprised by her husband's attempt to speak her language. With a shy smile, she blushes slightly, finding the gesture cute. Confused by the reaction, he internally questions whether he said something stupid. Amused by the scene, she points to herself and repeats her thanks in a sweet tone. With a long stride, the boy cuts across the space between the two. Focusing on her brown eyes, he replies, "You're welcome," leaving his wife amazed and speechless. Surprised by the attitude, the boy realizes that he has never heard a thank you, not even from his own family. With the bucket in her hand, the wife reflects that she is experiencing a collection of first times by his side. In the young woman's thoughts, the first stolen kiss still hammers strongly in her memory. Following in her husband's footsteps, she enters the cabin wondering if he has ever kissed other women. With her heart racing, the girl admits that she feels a pang of jealousy just imagining the scene. Inside the house, our hero drops the bucket of water near the table. Immediately, the young woman tries to take over the work, finding it strange that a man would be doing housework. In a surprising move, the protagonist lifts the heavy piece of meat without letting his wife exert herself. Curious, she stares at the boy, trying to understand why he acts as if this is normal. Out of nowhere, the hunter approaches dangerously, leaving the woman paralyzed with nervousness. Pressed against her face, he makes his wife hold her breath with anticipation. With her eyes closed, the girl curses herself for expecting another kiss out of nowhere. Passing straight by her, the boy simply picks up the wooden bucket calmly. Filled with shame, the little wife internally freaks out over her own embarrassing moment. Turning to face her, the protagonist is puzzled by the woman's bizarre reaction. Focused on her goal, she vows to keep her eyes wide open so as not to create any more false hopes. In a surprise attack, the hunter pulls the girl close and steals a real kiss. Completely unprepared, she receives the kiss with wide eyes, feeling the world spin. After the romantic touch, the boy steps back, holding the bucket, and notices a small presence. Hidden in the doorway, the little blonde girl curiously spies on the lovebirds. Overcome with shame, the wife flees like a hurricane out of the house. Once in the backyard, the boy walks calmly towards the forest accompanied by the child. Clinging to his clothes, the girl follows the giant's steps with firmness. With a gentle smile, the protagonist thanks the little girl for her help. Suddenly, the little girl lowers her head, looking upset about something. Quick-witted, he realizes his mistake and repeats his thanks, calling the girl by name. Overjoyed, Dorothy's huge smile spreads across her face as she hears the hunter's voice. Back at the cabin, the wife tends to the fur of the slain monster on the ground. Crossing his legs on the floor, our boy doesn't understand why she's drying that smelly thing inside the house. Analyzing the gleam in the girl's eyes, the hero realizes the true value of the item. Before him, the woman smiles at the leather, confirming that the material is worth a lot of money. Approaching her mother, the little girl stares at the makeshift rug in astonishment. Without fear, the girl strokes the snout of the dead animal, finding it wonderful. Faced with the funny scene, the mother and daughter burst into hearty laughter. Pleased with the lighthearted atmosphere, the little protagonist smiles, finding the two girls' happiness contagious. The following morning, the cabin awoke peacefully under the soft sunlight. Focused on the preparation, the wife cuts the pieces of meat in the wooden bowl. Observing everything in silence, the hunter plans to imitate her technique next time. With great care, the girl separates the fat, leaving the boy relieved that he hasn't wasted any. With his mind racing, the protagonist decides he needs to learn everything about local survival. Thinking about money, he wants to master the rules of commerce to secure his family's future. Determined to act, the boy gets up, brushing the dust off his trousers. Walking towards the exit, he crosses paths with his wife, who tries to stop him from working. Turning to face the girl, he finds her request to continue resting strange. In a relaxed tone, he states that he has regained his energy and no longer feels any pain. With his hand on her shoulder, the boy assures her that he will not push his own limits. As he leaves for the forest, he leaves the woman sighing with relief. In the middle of the trees, the hunter chooses a very thick trunk to practice. Knowing nothing about wood, he assesses the axe's reflex, blindly trusting in brute force. In a powerful movement, the boy raises the tool and brings his arm down with all his might. With the absurd impact, the wooden handle breaks instantly. Unbalanced by the damage, the protagonist retreats as the sharp blade flies into the bushes. Completely embarrassed, the boy scratches his head, holding only a broken stump. Later, the house remains untouched in the middle of the afternoon. Pushing open the door, our hero returns exhausted from work. Worried, his wife runs towards him, noticing his visible tiredness. Dropping the basket of firewood on the ground, the boy takes a deep breath. Collapsing onto the wooden floor, the hero finally allows himself to rest. Quickly, the young woman holds her husband's hand, relieved that he is unharmed. With a tired smile, the boy simply thanks them for their care. At the back of the room, little Dorothy runs excitedly to the basin of water. By dipping their little hands into the liquid, the child prepares their own healing magic. Dripping water on the floor, the girl advances towards the hero. In a cute movement, the little girl shakes her wet hands in the hunter's face. Caught off guard, the boy can't hold back a genuine laugh. Soon the wife joins in the fun, laughing at her daughter's innocence. Noticing her parents' joy, the little girl becomes fixated on the protagonist's face. Gently stroking the child's hair, the hero thanks her for her little help with all the love in the world. Putting an end to the fun, the mother laughs and tells her daughter to stop getting the house wet. In the middle of the room, the couple enjoys the girl's inexhaustible energy. Closing his eyes, our boy realizes that happiness has finally found its way to him. Outside, smoke rises from the chimney, marking the home of the new family. Heating the house, the fire burns brightly in the stone structure. Taking turns sharing a hearty meal, the couple eats peacefully while the little girl sleeps on the floor. Breaking the silence of the night, the wife catches the hero's attention with a passionate look. Surprised by the attitude, the boy realizes that he has never heard a thank you, not even from his own family. With the bucket in her hand, the wife reflects that she is experiencing a collection of first times by his side. In the young woman's thoughts, the first stolen kiss still hammers strongly in her memory. Following her husband, she enters the cabin wondering if he has ever kissed other women. With her heart racing, the girl admits that she feels a pang of jealousy just imagining the scene. Inside the house, our hero drops the bucket of water near the table. Immediately, the young woman tries to take over the work, finding it strange that a man would be doing housework. In a surprising move, the protagonist lifts the heavy piece of meat without letting his wife exert herself. Curious, she stares at the boy, trying to understand why he acts as if this is normal. Out of nowhere, the hunter approaches dangerously, leaving the woman paralyzed with nervousness. Pressed against her face, he makes his wife hold her breath with anticipation. With her eyes closed, the girl curses herself for expecting another kiss out of nowhere. Steps later, the boy simply picks up the wooden bucket, ignoring the weather. Dying of embarrassment, the little wife internally freaks out over her own blunder. Facing her, the protagonist is puzzled by the woman's bizarre reaction. Focused on her goal, she vows to keep her eyes wide open so as not to create any more false hopes. In a surprise attack, the hunter pulls the girl close and steals a real kiss. Completely unprepared, she receives the kiss with wide eyes, feeling the world spin. After the romantic touch, the boy steps back, holding the bucket, and notices a small presence. Hidden in the doorway, the little blonde girl curiously spies on the lovebirds. Desperate with shame, the wife flees like a hurricane out of the house. Once in the backyard, the boy walks calmly towards the forest accompanied by the child. Clinging to his clothes, the girl follows the giant's steps with firmness. With a gentle smile, the protagonist thanks the little girl for her help. Suddenly, the little girl lowers her head, looking upset about something. Quick-witted, he realizes his mistake and repeats his thanks, calling the girl by name. Smiling and happy, Dorothy breaks into a huge smile upon hearing the hunter's voice. Back at the cabin, the wife tends to the fur of the slain monster on the ground. With her legs crossed on the floor, our boy doesn't understand why she's drying that smelly thing inside the house. Seeing the sparkle in the girl's eyes, the hero realizes the true value of the item. Before him, the woman smiles at the leather, confirming that the material is worth a lot of money. Approaching her mother, the little girl stares at the makeshift rug in astonishment. The brave girl strokes the snout of the dead animal, thinking it's the coolest thing ever. Faced with the funny scene, the mother and daughter burst into hearty laughter. Caught up in the atmosphere, the little protagonist smiles, finding the two girls' happiness wonderful. The following morning, the cabin awoke peacefully under the soft sunlight. Focused on the preparation, the wife cuts the pieces of meat in the wooden bowl. Silently, the hunter plans to imitate her technique next time. With great care, the girl separates the fat, leaving the boy relieved that he hasn't wasted any. With his mind racing, the protagonist decides he needs to learn everything about local survival. Thinking about money, he wants to master the rules of commerce to secure his family's future. Determined to act, the boy gets up, brushing the dust off his trousers. On his way out, he crosses paths with his wife, who tries to stop him from working. Near the door, he finds the request to continue resting strange. In a relaxed tone, he states that he has regained his energy and no longer feels any pain. With his hand on her shoulder, the boy assures her that he will not push his own limits. On the way to the forest, he leaves the woman sighing with relief. In the middle of the trees, the hunter chooses a very thick trunk to practice. Knowing absolutely nothing about wood, he assesses the axe's reflex, blindly trusting in brute force. In a powerful movement, the boy raises the tool and brings his arm down with all his might. With the absurd impact, the wooden handle breaks instantly. Unbalanced by the damage, the protagonist retreats as the sharp blade flies into the bushes. Completely embarrassed, the boy scratches his head, holding only a broken stump. Later, the house remains untouched in the middle of the afternoon. Upon opening the door, our hero returns from work exhausted. Worried, his wife runs towards him, noticing his visible tiredness. Putting the basket of firewood down, the boy takes a deep breath. Upon falling onto the wooden floor, the hero finally allows himself to rest. Quickly, the young woman holds her husband's hand, relieved that he is unharmed. With a tired smile, the boy simply thanks them for their care. At the back of the room, little Dorothy runs excitedly to the basin of water. With her little hands in the water, the child prepares her own healing magic. Soiling the ground with drops of water, the girl advances towards the hero. In a cute movement, the little girl shakes her wet hands in the hunter's face. Caught off guard, the boy can't hold back a genuine laugh. Soon the wife joins in the fun, laughing at her daughter's innocence. Observing her parents' joy, the little girl becomes fixated on the protagonist's face. With a quick pat on the head, the hero thanks her for the little help with all the love in the world. To put an end to the fun, the mother laughs and tells her daughter to stop wetting the house. In the middle of the room, the couple enjoys the girl's inexhaustible energy. When he closes his eyes, our boy realizes that happiness has finally found its way to him. Outside, smoke rises from the chimney, marking the home of the new family. To heat the house, the fire burns strongly in the stone structure. During a large meal, the couple eats peacefully with the little girl sleeping on the floor. Breaking the silence of the night, the wife catches the hero's attention with a passionate look. With the axe in hand, our hero advances confidently, stating that he now has a real weapon. Stepping firmly through the dark forest, he walks alert to any sign of danger. Suddenly, the weather changes, and the boy realizes that the air has become too heavy. Squeezing the wooden handle tightly, he finds it incredibly difficult even to breathe. Tense about the situation, the hunter wonders which bizarre monster will leap from the shadows this time. Behind him, heavy footsteps break the silence of the thicket. Startled by the noise, the boy turns his head, sweating profusely, trying to identify the threat. Before him appears a mysterious figure wearing a dark cloak amidst the trees. Facing the hooded old man, our protagonist immediately asks who is there. Near the rocks, giant traces of fresh blood reveal that a recent massacre took place. Judging by the footprints, you deduce that a colossal beast passed by there. Shocked, the old man confesses that he thought the boy had help, but in reality, he killed the animal alone. In the gentleman's memories, the little Pratinha barely knew how to hold the axe properly just days ago. Confused by the evolution, the old man doesn't understand how the inexperienced giant managed to take down a monster of that size. For the experienced hunter, even a trained professional would die fighting the creature without a good weapon. Intrigued by the mystery, the hooded figure decides to investigate the boy more closely. With slow steps, he approaches our hero to get the real proof. Face to face on the trail, the old man stares at the boy, hiding his true intentions. Without showing fear, the weary-eyed villager examines every detail of the young man's body. Focusing on the boy's injured arm, he sees deep claw marks. Judging by the shape of the wound, the hunter immediately confirmed it was a wolf bite. However, something doesn't add up, and the gentleman finds it strange that the wound is too clean. Under normal circumstances, a bite like that would become infected, and the victim would already be dead from fever. In that strange world, the existence of wizards is an extremely rare legend. Being people that commoners almost never see in their entire lives, magic users are true gods. Putting the pieces together, the old man deduces that the big boy can only be a wizard. With a wicked grin, the hooded figure inwardly rejoices, declaring that his chance has finally arrived. In the presence of the young man, the old man sees the perfect opportunity for revenge before he kicks the bucket. Suspicious of the silence, our protagonist squints and wonders who the hell that guy is. In the past, the old man was a young and energetic lumberjack. According to the rules of the time, becoming a forest ranger for a nobleman required serving in the war for a long period. To escape this cruel fate, the young man on the cover decided to become just an ordinary woodcutter in the village. Full of resources, the mountain offered everything the inhabitants needed. But the big problem was collecting the firewood safely. Because of the scarcity of wood at the edge of the forest, the lumberjack had no choice but to venture deep into the mountain. At that time, he thought the adventure would be perfect for mapping the territory. Little did he know the dark reason that kept the villagers away from the deepest parts. Exhausted after exploring the area, the young lumberjack finally collapsed to the ground, powerless. Utterly terrified, he faced real danger. Green, monstrous creatures known as goblins dominated the mountaintop. Famous for kidnapping human women, the monsters forced the prisoners to bear offspring. Because of this curse, the village lost almost all of its women and became the main target of the Green Plague. Hidden in the darkness, the woodcutter kept this deadly hatred in his heart for years. For decades, the old man lived among those miserable people, merely swallowing his anger. With fury burning in his chest, his only goal in life became exterminating the wretches. Vowing to survive at any cost, he swore to turn the goblin's nest to ashes. Returning to the present, the old man is certain that our boy is the perfect weapon for the job. Displaying an absurd physique and strength worthy of a giant, the protagonist impresses the elder. Combined with his magical regenerative powers, the boy can surpass any veteran hunter. Deep inside the cave, the goblins remain quiet, but they will soon attack the village when the women are finished. To avoid the worst, the old man decides to train the boy until he becomes a killing machine. Masterminding the plan in his own head, he warns that he needs to keep the nest a secret until the contract is sealed. Bound by the official agreement, the boy will not be able to back down or flee the mission. The protagonist bows respectfully as the old man speaks in the local language. Analyzing the boy's posture, the hunter notices that he has shifted his body weight backward. Even with a friendly smile, our hero doesn't let his guard down for a single second. Aware of the boy's potential, the old man promises to teach him everything he knows about hunting from that day forward. Confused by the conversation, the young man merely blinks, not understanding a word the master is saying. The following morning, the protagonist wakes up stretching his body and feeling that the night flew by. Near the fireplace, the wife is already tending the fire, spearing food for her daughter. Suddenly, the front door is opened from the outside without any warning. Irritated by the intrusion, the hero laments having let the old man enter his territory. Being quite protective, he doesn't want to turn the cabin into a place where just anyone can snoop. With a brazen face, the teacher displays a cynical smile, as if he's going to charge a high price for his teaching. Picking up the heavy bag, the boy sighs, accepting that he needs to work hard to master the hunt. From the edge of the stove, the wife approaches quickly with something in her hands. Holding an improvised lunchbox, she hands over the food with flushed cheeks and tired eyes. Faced with this scene, our protagonist finds the woman's attitude the cutest thing in the world. Without a word, the girl simply hands over the jar, sweating with nervousness and worry. Right behind them, little Dorothy runs off towards her adoptive father. With arms outstretched, the child runs awkwardly to get a hug. Smiling at the girl, the boy prepares to receive affection before leaving. Concerned about her husband, the young woman touches his bag, urging him to eat properly. Melted inside, the protagonist smiles in relief, feeling that he now has people who truly care. Trying to get the local language right, the wife wishes her beloved a safe trip, and he promises to return soon. With the heavy axe in hand, our hero advances confidently, declaring that he finally has a real weapon. As he passes through the tall trees, he walks attentively, watching for any sign of danger in the forest. Suddenly, the weather changes, and the boy realizes that the air has become too thick. With the wooden handle firmly in his hands, he finds it incredibly difficult even to breathe. Tense about the situation, the hunter wonders which bizarre monster will leap from the shadows this time. Behind him, heavy footsteps break the silence of the thicket. Startled by the noise, the boy turns his head, sweating profusely, trying to identify the threat. Before him appears a mysterious figure wearing a green cloak amidst the foliage. Getting straight to the point, our protagonist asks who is hiding there. Near the stones, giant traces of fresh blood reveal that a recent massacre took place. After examining the footprints, the gentleman deduces that a colossal beast passed by and acted alone. In the old man's memories, the little proto-child barely knew how to hold an axe properly just days ago. With his foot on the stone, the old man couldn't understand how the inexperienced giant had brought down a monster of that size. For the experienced hunter, even a trained professional would die fighting the creature without a good weapon. Intrigued by the mystery, the hooded figure utters a few words in the local language. Determined to get the real proof, he decides to investigate the boy more closely. With firm steps, you approach our hero. Face to face on the trail, the old man stares at the boy, hiding his true intentions. Without showing fear, the old man grabs the young man's injured arm. Looking closely at the deep marks, he immediately confirms it was a wolf bite. However, something doesn't add up, and the hunter finds it strange that the wound is clean and healed too quickly without killing the boy. In light of the evidence, the master understands that this leaves only one viable possibility. Completely shocked, the old man wonders if this big guy is actually a rare wizard. In that strange world, the existence of magic users is a powerful legend. Being people that commoners almost never see in their lives, these beings are true gods. Seeing the boy, the old man realizes he has found the gold mine. With a wicked grin and gleaming eyes, the hooded figure celebrates that his chance has finally arrived. Filled with repressed hatred, he sees the perfect opportunity for revenge before kicking the bucket. Suspicious of the silence, our protagonist squints and wonders who the hell that guy is. In the past, the master was just a young and spirited woodcutter. According to the rules of the time, becoming a forest ranger for a nobleman required serving in the war for a long period in exchange for status. To escape this fate, the young man on the cover decided to become an ordinary lumberjack in the village. Full of resources, the mountain offered everything the inhabitants needed. But the big problem was collecting the firewood without trespassing into dangerous areas. Because of the scarcity, the woodcutter had no choice but to climb the rocks to go deeper. At that time, he thought the adventure would be perfect for mapping the territory without suspecting the danger. Little did he know that a forest ranger contract required having all limbs intact. Exhausted and injured on the ground, the young lumberjack was disqualified before even signing the paper. Utterly terrified, he encountered the worst plague in the region. Green, monstrous creatures known as goblins dominated the mountaintop. Famous for kidnapping human women, the monsters forced the prisoners to bear offspring. Because of this curse, the village lost almost all of its women and became the main target of the plague. Hidden in the darkness, the old man kept this deadly hatred in his heart for years on end. For decades he lived among those miserable people, merely swallowing his anger and weeping. With fury burning in his chest, his only goal in life became turning the monster's nest to ashes. Back in the present, the master is certain that our boy is the perfect weapon for the job. Possessing an absurd physique, the protagonist impresses the elder with his immense strength. Combined with his magical regenerative powers, the boy becomes an unbeatable machine. Without a doubt, this young man can surpass any veteran hunter who has ever lived. Deep inside the cave, the goblins remain hidden, but they will soon attack the village when the women are finished. To prevent the massacre, the old man decides to train the boy until he becomes an elite hunter. With the plan fully formed in his head, he warns that he needs to keep the nest a secret until the contract is finalized. Bound by the official agreement, the boy will not be able to back down or flee the mission. The protagonist bows respectfully, but the old man notices that the boy's body weight is leaning back. Even with a friendly smile, our hero doesn't let his guard down for a single second. Aware of the potential, the old man extends his hand and promises to teach everything he knows about hunting. Confused by the conversation, the young man merely blinks, not understanding a word the master is saying. The following morning, the protagonist wakes up stretching his body and feeling that the night flew by near the fireplace. Annoyed at having brought the master there, he laments having let the old man discover where he lives. Being quite protective, he doesn't want to turn the cabin into a place where just anyone can get close to his wife. With a shove on the wooden door, he unceremoniously blocks the old man's entrance. With a brazen face, the teacher displays a cynical smile, like someone who's going to charge a high price for his teaching. In his memories of the ancient world, the boy compares that expression to that of an HR manager negotiating salary. With the bag on his back, the protagonist sighs, accepting that he needs to work very hard to master the hunt. From the edge of the stove, the wife quickly approaches, handing over an improvised lunchbox. Tired and breathless, the girl wipes the sweat from her flushed cheeks. Faced with this scene, our protagonist finds the woman's attitude to be the most beautiful thing in the world. Speechless, the young woman simply stares at her husband, overflowing with worry. Right behind them, little Dorothy runs off through the house. With arms outstretched, the child runs awkwardly, demanding attention. Excited about her lunchbox, the girl raises her hands, celebrating its delivery. Concerned about her husband, the young woman straightens his clothes, telling the young man to eat properly. Melted inside, the protagonist smiles in relief, feeling that he now has people who truly care. In an effort to learn the local language, the wife wishes her beloved a safe journey. Aware of the message from the tone of voice, the boy repeats the phrase and vows to return safe and sound. Slipping into a deep sleep, little Dorothy rests like an angel in bed. Broad smiles fill the table as the couple finally share a moment of peace. Carrying the sleeping little girl, our hero shows a totally paternal side. Without much effort, the boy lifts the child in his arms, and the girl gets up from the floor to help with the tidying up. Firm steps lead the hunter through the room lit only by the warm fire. Carefully, he lays the girl on the mattress, arranging the blankets to protect her from the cold. Outside, the isolated cabin gleams in the dark night. Near the fire, the young wife boils a cloth in hot water to clean the dirt. Right behind her, the big guy watches the girl's hard work with a look of pure admiration. Suddenly, he grabs the woman's wrist, interrupting their nightly cleaning. Taken by surprise, the girl blushes instantly, not understanding her husband's behavior. With a serious face, the protagonist looks at his companion, demonstrating that he wants to take care of her. Inside the brightly lit house, the two are dangerously close, creating a tense atmosphere. Taking the cloth from her hands, the boy begins to wipe the sweat from the girl's face. Gently, he wipes the young wife's neck with the cloth, drying the weariness of the day. Overcome with shame, she decides she shouldn't be so shy with her own husband. In a burst of courage, the girl steps forward and places her hands under his shirt. Straight to the defined chest, the young woman tries to reciprocate the affection, believing that this is a wife's obligation. Faced with the gentle touch, the hero smiles sweetly, finding the gesture very endearing. Dying of embarrassment, the girl recoils and tries to hide her red face. The boy quickly and firmly grabs her hand, preventing her escape. Their faces pressed together, their breaths mingling in the air, announcing the inevitable. Outside, the moon shines in the starry sky, maintaining the mystery of the couple. Already in bed, the lovebirds gaze at each other, lying side by side under the light of a lamp. The hunter leans over the girl, ready to steal another kiss. Tense and breathless, the young woman surrenders to the moment, awaiting contact. Focused on her husband, she closes her eyes, feeling her heart beat faster. In a deep kiss, the two finally seal their passionate relationship in the dark. Later, sleep overcomes the woman who rests serenely, clinging to the hero. In the middle of the night, the boy prays to Santa Claus, asking him never to take his new family away. In stark contrast, wealthy nobles live in gigantic palaces filled with butlers and separate bedrooms. Unlike royalty, commoners share the same space, squeezing entire families into a single bed. Due to this lack of space, children end up hearing and seeing everything their parents do. In the girl's traumatizing memories, her abusive stepfather would hit her mother under the covers, telling her to cry more quietly. Those terrifying screams marked the panicked early mornings of the little girl. Huddled under the blanket with her brother, the girl listened to her mother's sobs until dawn. Trembling with fear, the young woman always wondered when the nights would finally be silent. Opening her eyes in the present, the woman awakens from the nightmare of the past. Only the crackling of burning firewood breaks the silence of the warm cabin in the room. Confused by the comfort, she realizes she has fallen asleep on the fluffy mattress along with her husband. With a pleasant surprise, the girl notices that the big guy let her use his muscular arm as a pillow. Embracing little Dorothy, the young girl feels an immense relief wash over her soul. For the first time in her life, she discovers that a night spent with a husband can be sweet and safe. Aware of this new reality, the girl recognizes that her world has changed since the hero appeared. Completely in love, she snuggles even closer to the hunter's chest. Completely relaxed, the trio share the bed in a scene of pure cuteness. Grasping her beloved's arm, the woman feels her chest tingle with joy. Begging the heavens, she wishes that protective embrace would last forever. The following morning, the hero awakens, feeling the weight of the little girl sleeping on his chest. Getting up slowly, the boy takes absurd care not to wake anyone. He lovingly covers the little girl before sneaking away. Already up and dressed, the wife picks up a heavy bucket near the wood-burning stove. Without any warning, the protagonist appears and snatches the iron handle from her hands. Surprised by the giant, she widens her eyes, not understanding the unexpected help. Immediately, the boy takes on the responsibility, proving that the hard work is his. Splashing water everywhere, he empties the bucket with unnecessary brute force. Turning his face, he casts a calm and helpful glance at his companion. The young woman timidly stammers a few words, wishing her husband a good day. Touching her own cheek, she realizes it's as red as a bell pepper without knowing why. Quick with the translation, the boy discovers that the term that made her blush means darling in the local language. Determined to reciprocate the affection, he asks her what she wants to be called from now on. Dying of embarrassment, the young woman begs him to use the same affectionate word. Obeying the order, the hero lets out a loud, smiling deer. Immediately, the girl covers her face, panicking because of her own shyness. Finding the reaction adorable, the hunter decides to provoke her a little more. Nudging his beloved's back, he insists on calling her darling once more. Waking up in a good mood, little Dorothy rubs her eyes while sitting up in bed. Focusing on a large piece of currying meat at the back of the room, the child drools with anticipation. In one leap, the little girl darts out of the cabin, running with her arms outstretched. Passing right by the lovebirds, she lets out a cute scream, cutting the romantic mood. Leaning against the edge of the wooden bucket, the girl excitedly shouts for meat. Surprised by the word, the protagonist realizes she is hungry again. Amused by her desperation, he laughs as he watches the girl bent over, wanting to devour the raw food. With a hearty laugh, the hunter understands that he will need to work twice as hard to feed this little hurricane. With an axe in his hand, he enters the forest vowing to destroy any wolf that crosses his path. Back at the cabin, 3 village idiots break in looking for trouble. With a cynical grin, one of the invaders finds the wolf's skin stretched out in the corner. Fascinated by the size of the fur, the guys celebrate, thinking they've hit the jackpot. Without wasting any time, the 3 begin to rummage through every corner of the shack in search of more riches. Hidden under the table, little Dorothy trembles with fear, listening to the idiots asking if there's any meat around. With wide eyes, the little girl stifles tears, afraid of being discovered by that gang. In an act of courage, the wife stands in front of the invaders, demanding that they stay away from her belongings. Bathed in tears, the girl bravely shouts, declaring that all of this now belongs to her new family. Laughing at the situation, the idiots walk towards the woman, calling her cheeky. With a cowardly slap to the face, the leader of the invaders knocks the girl to the ground, laughing at her attempt to defend herself. Due to the force of the blow, the poor thing falls hard, hitting the wooden floor with gusto. In great pain, the wife can barely stand after the cowardly attack. Horrified by the scene, Dorothy watches everything from under the table, her heart pounding in her chest. Suddenly, memories of our protagonist's monstrous strength-beating wolves flood the little girl's mind. Unfortunately, the trauma of the past speaks louder, and she recalls the bruised faces of her mother and stepmother after beatings from her former father. To avoid making things worse, the little girl remembers that crying only made the abuse worse in the old house. Feeling guilty for hiding instead of helping the girl, she decides she needs to apologize to her adoptive mother. In tears, the little girl walks to the woman, begging not to be abandoned or treated like a ghost. With tears in her eyes, Dorothy takes the blame for everything in a heartbreaking outburst. Without a second thought, the wife hugs her little daughter tightly, crying along with her. In tears, the girl confesses that she only pretended not to know the girl in the forest to keep her safe away from those monsters. In a tight embrace, the mother assures Dorothy that she is not to blame for anything and tries to calm the little girl's fear. Kneeling on the floor, she comforts the child, reminding her that now her new dad is there to protect them. Confused by the revelation, the little girl replies that her real father is already dead, but the young woman smiles, explaining the truth. Patiently, she explains that our protagonist is her husband, and this automatically makes him Dorothy's new dad. In the pure mind of the child, the logic of having a stepmother and a new father begins to make sense. Completely shocked, little Dorothy's golden eyes widen, hardly believing the revelation. Through the window, the girl sees the big guy walking back through the bushes. Quickly, she asks her mother if that giant man is really her new father. With great affection, the wife strokes her daughter's head, explaining that the protagonist is different from the deceased and is there to protect them. At this point, the memory of the hunter's powerful punch comes to little Dorothy's mind as proof of protection. Determined to find the hero, the child runs towards the exit in a hurry. Shouting loudly, she calls her father from the window, drawing the boy's attention. In her view, a man with a huge face, a giant body, and gigantic hands is the perfect dad. With long strides, little Dorothy goes to meet her hero. Memories of his warm embrace during the night reinforce the affection she feels for the protagonist. In the girl's mind, the smiles, the abundant food, and the beautiful name she received are proof of pure love. Radiant with the discovery of having such a wonderful father, she runs screaming for the hunter. Focused on the path, our protagonist hears the sweet voice and sees the little girl running in his direction. With open arms, the boy prepares to receive the little girl. In a leap of pure joy, the little girl throws herself into the giant's lap, giving him a tight hug. Even without understanding the words she shouts, the hunter feels in his heart all the purity of that moment. With little Dorothy pressed against his chest, he walks back feeling like the happiest man in the world. Suddenly, a strange, damp smell catches our hero's attention. Looking at her little outfit, he realizes that the little girl must have wet herself from so much excitement. With a silly smile, the boy finds her innocence adorable, but decides to hurry to change his clothes before she catches a cold. In the backyard, the wife runs to meet them, relieved to see them both safe and sound. Together, the three embrace in the middle of the woods, celebrating the union of the new family. Suddenly, Dorothy points behind her, desperately asking for the game meat. In a frantic race, the little girl dashes back to check the food bucket. On the way, Dorothy walks right past the three aggressors lying on the ground after receiving a monumental beating from the protagonist. Ignoring the bodies of the idiots, the little girl only cares about securing her lunch. Upon seeing the bucket full of succulent steaks, she freezes with excitement. With all her childlike strength, she tries to drag the heavy wooden container. Unbalanced by the weight, Dorothy ends up falling headfirst into the bucket with her little legs in the air. Desperate, the couple rushes to help the girl who nearly choked on the meat. Fierce and sullen, the little meat hurricane makes a face, protecting the food with teeth and claws. Shocked by the scene, the protagonist admits that his daughter's obsession with food is both frightening and hilarious. With a smile on her face, the wife accompanies her husband back to the safety of the cabin. With Dorothy inside his own bucket, the giant is amused by the little girl's carefree attitude. With open arms, the girl celebrates the luxurious outing as if she were a queen. Faced with so much cuteness, our protagonist reflects that becoming a hero is the easiest thing in the world for a child. Near the entrance, the wife announces in her language that it's time to bring the food inside. With her finger pointed, she signals Dorothy to go inside quickly because the forest is dangerous at night. Without wasting any time, the girl enters the cottage, celebrating the wonderful dinner that awaits them. Relieved that everyone was safe, the hunter closed the door with a calm sigh. Outside the cabin, the three thugs groan in pain on the ground under the protagonist's cold gaze. With eyes gleaming with murderous fury, the boy approaches, ready to wipe them all out. Suddenly, the village chief appears in the clearing and extends his hand, preventing a greater tragedy. With firm gestures, the elder orders him not to kill anyone to avoid problems with the local law. With a cool head, the protagonist realizes that being arrested or becoming a slave again would ruin his new life. Looking back, he sees his wife at the door and remembers that now there are people who depend on him. Looking at the cowards on the ground, he vows to memorize each face, promising a fate worse than death if they cross his path again. To ease the tension, the old master pats the protagonist on the shoulder and points to a toolbox. Without complaining, the boy gathers the essential items, knowing he will need everything to keep his family safe in the mountains. Keeping an eye on the doorframe, our protagonist finds his wife and daughter laughing together inside the heated cabin. With a slight smile on his face, the hunter enters carrying the wolf pelt and the toolbox he received from his master. Kneeling on the wooden floor, he begins to take out the hammers and essential tools to repair the shack. Determined with his iron tools, the boy takes an oath that losing a family even once in his life has been more than enough suffering. Facing the two of them, the little protagonist opens his arms warmly, silently promising that no matter what happens, he will protect them both with his own life.